message that I am going to try and share with you is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. Hello, and this is a very warm welcome to the teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. We've been thinking over the last few weeks about the business of eternal security, and I want to return now to the text in John chapter 17. I hope that the little diversion around the thought on eternal security was helpful to you, because I think it's such a fundamental issue. I mean, after all, if one hasn't resolved that question, one can't really be safe and sound, which of course is the title of the book, that is really thinking about that first phase of the Christian life, that child phase. Well, we're in John chapter 17, and I'm going to read to you a little bit and just talk and share with you as we go along. Because I think this is such an intimate place that we've arrived at. I'm at John 17, where am I? Let's have a look. Let me read from verse 16. Actually, let me back up a little bit to verse 14. Jesus says, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Well, you know, before we go anywhere else, we just have to kind of pause for a minute, don't we, and just take hold of that, because that's a pretty flabbergasting statement. Jesus is saying, I've given them your word, I've done that, and again, be careful with you, because I think that the tendency when we read together, the tendency when we read the word, the sense of I've given them your word, the tendency here, I think, is to think that, you know, we've been given a whole series of Bible verses, or we've been given the Bible. Jesus didn't come to give us the Bible. He came that we might have life. And Jesus is the life. Now, let's be clear about something here. We need to start thinking in terms of the Bible. I think it's been much more helpful for us if we thought in terms of the Bible being a platform rather than a pedestal. Sometimes I think as Christians we use the Bible as a pedestal, something to sort of stand on, to say, look at us, how spiritually superior we are. But actually as a platform, it's something to build on. And here Jesus says, I've given them your word. Well, you know, we could push this, and I think it would be right to do it. When we talk about the word is the logos, and we could push that a little bit further in. But let's hold that for a moment, because I don't need to jump off on that. There's a much easier place for me to enter into that discussion. But look here now. I've given them your word. Important, not your words. Critical. I've given them your word, and the world has hated them. Well, wait a minute. Why would the world hate these people, us, because Jesus gave them his word? Why would that cause such loathing? Well, because these are the clash of two kingdoms. These are the clash of two realities. One is the illusory world of the ego and the self and the outer life, and the other is the true spiritual word of the inner life. Now, let me just be clear about something. Religion is part of the outer life. It's not part of the inner life. Religion is part of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's most important that we see that, because too often, I think, as Christians, we think that religion is a good thing. It's not a good thing. Religion is a bad thing. It's a self-effort thing. Religion is our attempt to improve ourselves, our attempt to make ourselves worthy before God. There's nothing good about religion any more than there's anything religious about God. So we need to be very, very clear on that. So, and the world hates us. Well, why does the world hate us? Because the world's religious. We're not. And it's important that you understand that. And so he says, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world. Now watch that. You're in the world, but you're not of the world. So you live in this world, but you are not of this world. Well, if you're not of this world, what world are you of? You're of the other world, the supernatural world, the invisible world, the world that's above. And the world that's above has entered into the world within, the physical, natural world. But don't get hung up on that, Jesus says. Don't get hung up on that, because look, just as I am not of this world, nor are they. So there is a quality, there is a supernatural thought here that would say, that we are of the same lineage, we are of the same heritage, we are of the same genesis, we are of the same, bloodline, if you want, of Jesus. Just as Jesus is not of this world, we are not of this world. There is not a single person that would consider that Jesus is of this world. He came into this world, but he was otherworldly, as indeed are we. But yet we seem to have lost sight of that, because we strive through our religious practice, through our ego, through our self-effort to become supernaturally. Whereas I keep labouring this point, but it's worth labouring it. We are naturally supernatural. It is unnatural for us to not be supernatural. It is hard for us, it's effort for us not to be supernatural, because we are supernatural people, because we are not of this world any more than Jesus is of this world. Most important. So, he says, sanctify them in truth. Your word is truth. Well, now hold on a minute, because we know that Jesus is the truth. Now, let's think about this, because typically, this is a great word. When you hear sanctify, every religious hackle in your body is up, and your religious antennae is bleeping, because to us, the word sanctify has this idea about doing something to separate ourselves. And so what we think is that sanctification is this process of where we gradually reform our behaviour. We do less and less of more and more, and we withdraw ourselves, if you will, from the world and pull ourselves away. So we take this idea that sanctification means to be set apart. Okay. What if sanctification means to be set apart from ever being set apart? By that I mean, what if sanctification, instead of being a kind of progressive rectification of my behaviour, became a progressive recognition of my identity, and a progressive recognition that I am identified and I am at one with not only with God, but with my brother and my sister and all that has ever been created. That there is this interconnectedness that means that sanctification for me would mean that I would never ever again be separated from the idea that I am anything other than one with the universe. And there is a oneness in God that's the most important oneness. In Him all things exist. There's no sense in which Jesus is remote. There's no sense in which Jesus is removed. There's no sense in which sanctification with Jesus means a coming away from that which He's created. On the contrary, sanctification is about coming to alive to the one in whom we live and breathe and have our being. But He says, look, watch this. As you sent me into the world, Jesus says, so I have sent them into the world, and for their sake I consecrate myself, that they may also be sanctified in truth. That's a nice idea. And again, we've got this fixation, and I completely get where we've got it from. We've got this fixation that sanctification must mean somehow being set apart for this holy service to God. And that's why we've come up with these very curious ideas that we talk about people having, do you do secular or spiritual work? So if you go to work, somehow that's secular. If you work in the church, somehow that's spiritual. Well, let me tell you something. As someone who's worked in a church, there's a lot of very secular behaviour goes on there. But the truth of the matter is, there is no such thing as secular and spiritual. There's no such divide. Everything you do is spiritual, because we're spiritual people. And we must never lose sight of that. We lose sight of our spirituality and secularize any aspect of our lives, then it seems to me that we are not sanctifying ourselves, if you like. Now, so here we are then. Now, what's interesting about this text is we get to the 20th verse, and you think to yourself, well, fair enough, Jesus has been speaking here about his prayer for the disciples. He's talking about his prayer for those, the 11 that were with him, and you think, wow, that's absolutely amazing. Gosh, if only, isn't that incredible? Oh, for the halcyon days of the apostolic life. Imagine if we would have been with Jesus and all the rest of that romantic stuff that we say. But then Jesus goes right ahead and says here in the 20th verse, I don't ask for these only. No, this is my prayer, he's saying, my request isn't confined just to these that are with me here. No, not at all, he said. But for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they may also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. Now, listen to that. So that means this prayer extends down through 20 odd centuries to come to sit where you and I are. And that prayer, the effective prayer, that cry of God, that word of Jesus is saying, I'm not just praying for the 12, I'm not just praying for Peter, I'm not talking about James and John and Zebedee and Philip and those guys, I'm not just praying for them. I'm praying for all those who would come to believe in me through their word, and you and I have come to believe in Jesus through this word, that we, you and I, would be one, just as the Father and the Son are one, that we, you and I, would be one with, Jesus says, us. That you, me, Paul, and you, lovely person who's watching, we are one, just as the Father is one with the Son, you and I are one in the Godhead. That's what it says. That's what it says. Listen. Verse 20. I don't ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. Isn't it interesting that there is more division in the church now than ever before? We find ourselves pulling each other apart every which way, and may I add, pulling each other apart and arguing with each other about points of doctrine and about points and degrees of sanctification. Holiness movement, this movement, so-and-so movement, ones who fast, ones who don't, ones who baptize, ones who don't, ones who go to church, ones who don't. And there's this constant ripping apart as we kind of seek to separate ourselves. And the clearest implication of God is, there is no separation. That's the whole point. There is no separation. There's never been any separation between you and me, and between God and us, and between God and himself. We're just one. That they may be one, Jesus says. They may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they may also be in us. So that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory, listen to this, the glory that you have given me, I have given them, that they, dear Lord, that they may be one, even as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me and loved me, and love them even as you love me. The glory. Jesus says, Father, in the beginning of this prayer, glorify your Son. That word doxo, that the glory that is of God. All heaven is full of his glory. And Jesus says, the glory that you've given to me, I have given to them, to you, to me. Glory be to God. Why? That we may be one, just as they are one. This teaching of oneness is so strong, is so profound, is such a key, that we have to get after this misunderstanding about sanctification that would seek to separate us because separation is not of God. Oneness is of God. Hear that word again. And I'll finish with just reading this verse to you. The glory that you have given me. Now ask yourself this question. What is the glory that God has given to his Son? Well, whatever that glory is, and meditate on that. That glory Jesus has given to us. That's what he's done. And he's given it to us. Why? That we may be one even as the Godhead is one. I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me. In short, what does that mean? It means this. It means the reason why that you and I have been given the glory is that we may become perfectly one, just as Jesus is perfectly one. So as, once we understand what it means to live in the glory, once we understand what it means to genuinely know what sanctification is, the progressive recognition of who you are, we are one just as Jesus is one, and that we may say precisely what Jesus said to Philip. And when Jesus said to Philip, in that marvelous but most subtle of rebukes, Philip, have I been with you so long? If you have seen me, you have seen the Father. And dare I say it to you, but when we understand the truth of oneness, we'll be able to say to people, have you been with me so long? If you've seen me, you've seen Jesus. Well, bless you. Let me leave you to think about that until next time. Look forward to being with you again. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Everybody I know who really gets this message at a gut level has been to hell and back. I don't know anybody that really gets this that's not been in the slough of despond, in the depths of hell. And it's only when you're down in the depths of hell that you can come to that grace moment. You see, grace isn't just some cute little theology. That's not what it is. Grace isn't for the strong. Don't think grace is for the strong. It's not even for the weak, because if you say you're weak, you're saying you've got some strength. Grace is for dead people. Grace is for people that have got nothing and nowhere else to go, who are finished, who are down and out, who are over. It's finished. And it's for people who are in the wilderness. You find grace, Jeremiah said, in the wilderness. That's where you find grace. When you're in the wilderness, in the midst of despair, and there's nowhere for you to go, that's when you hear the voice of grace. And this young man is in the wilderness. He's in despair. And the Bible says, and the famine came on him. Watch this. Sometimes people come to me and they say, oh, I'm struggling. I'm thinking, no, you're not struggling. You're not there yet. Because I know full well that when somebody's sinking, they've got to hit the bottom. Because when they hit the bottom, they can get some traction and spring back up again. But you've got to hit the bottom. But the problem is you don't know how deep your self-reliance gets. You don't